Hi, this is Shira Rubinoff. I'm here with Eric Hanson, Chief Marketing Officer, and Samir Hajarnis, Vice President, Growth and Transformation of OneSpan. Welcome.
Thank you,
Okay.
Shira.
So, Eric, we're currently in the area of Web 3.0, where we know data is stored securely and distributed across many devices, which in turn removes the need for centralized servers. This would also potentially reduce the risk of massive data leaks because data would no longer be centrally stored. So, that can make it more resilient to being compromised. So, given that movement to Web 3.0, why does it matter for enterprise and customers?
It's a great question. I appreciate that. And first of all, just thank you for having both Samir and I today. Really, I think it's a bigger. The question's a little bit bigger. So if I could just take a second to step
Please.
back, and if you think about digital transformation, it's really been going on for probably close to 30 years, right? Certainly the early part of my career. And what we saw with Web 1.0, and I think this is important to thinking about where we are with Web 3.0, was really one directional, right? It was very much organizations were enabled with a technology or a channel to communicate to a much broader range of consumers out there, but it was somewhat one way. People were publishing information, and then consumers could access it in it more readily. As we moved to Web 2.0, that became more bi-directional. We saw the emergence of companies like eBay, Amazon. Why? The technology matured, the plumbing supporting the internet matured, higher bandwidth, more capable. And so we saw more sophisticated use cases being supported over the internet or the web. And then with Web 3.0, that continued to mature. You look at things like scripting languages that became more dominant versus things like C++ from the 90s and into the 2000s.
Correct.
And what that did, I mean, the byproduct of that was an acceleration from an innovation perspective. So getting back to your question around where we are with Web 3.0, what we're seeing is just this expansion of opportunity around innovation and bringing more products to market more quickly. The downside to that, however, to your point, is when you decentralize, a lot of the companies that have emerged and taken advantage of these opportunities moved very quickly. A lot of them came from SMB, where
Yes.
security was perhaps an afterthought, right? They were much more focused on growth at any cost, eerily familiar to what we saw in the dot com bust of 2000. Let's acquire as many users as we can as quickly as we can. And so the after effect of that really is vulnerabilities around security.
Yep.
So now if you layer on something like COVID and you think about how many organizations trying to leverage these applications that have been built on top of a Web 3.0 backbone, what we're finding now is, while they had to, sort of choose between good, fast, cheap, pick two, common cliche, they picked the latter of the two. Why? Because they had to move quickly and overnight and they didn't think it was permanent. And also because they didn't have these things budgeted as they were accelerating their digital transformation plans. So again, now as we emerge out of COVID, we're really seeing that the biggest attack surface has become people, both the people inside our organizations as well as our customers. And so OneSpan, that's really what those are the things that we're really focused on in terms of how we think about the intersection and the opportunity around Web 3.0 and how we can both simplify the customer transaction journey while also securing it to kind of bring trust and loyalty back between our customers and their customers.
And I love the fact how you highlighted certain pieces that are actually extremely critical in the security industry, where, as you said, acquiring customers really quickly and then thinking about security after the fact, almost putting a band-aid on something that should have been built in from the ground up. And that's where the best security companies really shine, is understanding security has to be built in and thinking about the people as well as the technology, the people, the process, the technology, the glue in between. How do you make it all work together and work well? So thank you for that. I think that was a very critical piece that you shared. And just the progression of 1.0 to 2.0 to 3.0, I think that really helps our audience understand the progression as well as the steps and the movement of where we are today. So thank you for that. And Samir, can you talk to me about the current digital agreements process? How secure are these processes right now?
I mean, I saw this one report from the FTC which said last year, consumers lost over $6 billion in 2021 to fraud, and frauds year over year increasing, in double digits. And this is just numbers which have been reported. So you can imagine what's unreported. A lot of the frauds especially in North America goes in a big way unreported in that sense. But it's important to see, this in the context of the market forces that are operating here, right? So one of the things which we saw was this continuous shift towards, going towards cloud computing and cloud consumption. I mean, that's a secular trend. It's happening across the globe there. The other thing which we saw, which came more so from the pandemic there, is that, it wasn't just the consumers were remote, but, remote work enforced in employees being outside too. And this is all happening where digital consumption is on a rapid increase as well. Like mobile adoption is also happening. So it creates, like, as Eric was looking at this from that surface attack surface that hackers and fraudulent characters have. This is ever expanding. They had a field day in the last couple of years, kind of breaking through with, especially with consumers, kind of dropping their guard there. So what we see out there is, that there's a lot of systems being implemented with kind of like a patchwork of quilt of different disparate platforms. I wouldn't say that people don't have secure platforms in there, but they're not really secure to the way they should have been grounds up built. And so, you've got these disjoint systems providing a bad experience in overall way, but also not doing their jobs in terms of what today's digital products, today's digital adopted kind of transformed processes need in terms of a grounds up security. Most customers are yet doing what I see out there is using the same KYC, same identity verification techniques that they used 5 years ago, pre-pandemic. I mean, that's not, we don't live in that same world today. And so as you look at this, and think of it even from a risk perspective, risk is today an event which is triggered from one system to another disparate system, and then some action is taken. Is that how you could stop fraud in a world which is operating in the Web 3.0 environment? I mean, I don't think so. And so what we see here is right now a lot of disparate systems doing this, and probably people have this kind of feeling that we are secure, but it does introduce a lot of risk in the businesses. And as people, today we see people, coming out of the pandemic and looking at this risk and saying, how do I de-risk my business? How do I look at these platforms? How do I look at these digitally transformed processes that I had and kind of take them to the next stage, which will support my business going ahead? So yes, there are systems there, but we do see a lot of gaps in the way they were implemented. As Eric mentioned, people went for the cheap, fast approach, and that did introduce a lot many gaps to kind of be addressed going ahead.
Sure. No, thank you. And it's a real daunting task to look at all these pieces and do it right, from the beginning, and build it in a way that would work both technically, securely, internally, dealing with the human factors piece. And Eric, balancing security, collaboration, and the user experience, it's not just daunting, it's challenging. How can organizations effectively do this?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think the way that organizations, again, I think COVID certainly served a little bit as a catalyst for this. You look at retail as an example, and what retail ended up doing initially, obviously they had to shift their business very much online. But by the tail end, as stores started to open up, what started to emerge is this recognition that to scale businesses, of course, doing things digitally is incredibly efficient, but from a customer experience perspective, it's not always the best thing. And so using that as an example, again, flash forward to the tail end of the COVID era. And what has happened now is this hybrid approach from a retail perspective, where you're combining digital experiences where consumers are doing things online, but they still want to interface or interact with the vendor. They still want to test drive the car. They still want to try on the piece of clothing. They still want that tactile experience for whatever reason. And so hybrid experiences are emerging. So if you take that forward and think about things like lending or banking, or and you look at some of the trends in the industry as organizations are trying to be more efficient, and they're also trying to drive customer experience, they have to create these sort of hybrid experiences. You think about some of the banks and how many brick and mortar locations have been closed. What about those times when a consumer wants to meet face to face with their lender? How do you accommodate that? So I think it's these hybrid experiences, which again, have to combine a high degree of security around making sure that the person you're interacting with is the person you think they are, both on the vendor side and on the consumer side, but then also making sure that that doesn't get in the way of a consumer inspired, which is what our consumers expect, a consumer inspired type of experience in terms of how they're onboarded as a new customer or how they transact as a customer.
Well, I love that you said that. And I think we could almost say it's like, let's say the hybrid way of going back to work, partially back in person or back at home. But not only, I think that it provides that level of comfort to an individual that they can interact with somebody, it gives a level of trust. You know, seeing someone, feeling it, wondering who's on the other end. Almost, you could say like Zoom, you're seeing somebody. Is that another level when you're actually on the phone? And I like how you describe that, but how important would you say those scenarios are? Is it something that people should say, you know what, it's a nice to have, or do you think that it's a need to have? Like this is something organizations must do?
I think it depends on the use case and the business model. Mileage is going to vary for every organization and every industry, just like the hybrid work models that you're referring to do, right? Sure. For manufacturing, obviously, people need to be on an assembly line to assemble products. So that's a very different scenario than, an information worker and in the flexibility that we can afford, that type of persona. And so those are different. And I think if you think about, I'll use e-signature as an example, of course, organizations want to scale, they want to grow more quickly, they want to be more efficient. There's certain processes in terms of the experience, in our case, kind of driving transaction completions and customer onboarding. There's certain experiences that can be automated and embedded into digital workflows, self-service types of scenarios. But it can't be a one size fits all approach. And so a lot of the banks that we're working with are saying, that's great for this type of customer or this particular use case, but we have these other very more complex or high value use cases that really need a human to moderate or help advise a client through the process. And sometimes that means, if you think about it in terms of a good, better, best approach, sometimes that means, you're on the phone with somebody and then you're escalating and you're using technology like co-browsing to go through, a multi-step agreement to make sure that you understand all of the terms and conditions, that if you have questions, you have the ability to answer them. You've been authenticated on the way in, right? In other cases, you really want to meet face to face. Replicating that experience of, traditionally being able to go into a bank or going and visiting your lender or going and doing the auto financing and what have you. And so I think it's really trying to create these hybrid experiences that allow an organization to scale across those different use cases, from something that can absolutely be, done digitally, that scales, that's extremely efficient, that a customer, if they want, can do in a self-service way. But then also being able to provide the flexibility to your customers for those scenarios. I think about my parents. My parents just refinanced 6 months ago. They absolutely wanted to meet their lender in person, right? Or they wanted to see them face to face. And so it was a combination of meeting them in person and going through some of the documentation online, face-to-face over video. And I think it's being able to provide those types of scenarios for your customers is really the critical piece here as we drive customer experience. And make sure, to your point, I love the fact that you use the word trust, because at the end of the day, it's not just about the one transaction, it's about the repeated transactions and your ongoing relationship, right? So it's about trust and loyalty.
Right. No, I definitely agree. I also think that you also highlighted another really important point is there's no one size fits all. And that comes with security, it comes with people, it could be cross-generational, it becomes a level of trust, it becomes a level of flexibility, like what works for one person or one organization may not work for another. And it really shows the growth of our industry where it was almost a plug and play because those were the solutions out there. And I think organizations, including OneSpan, really sees that and was able to develop themselves in a way that they can be flexible and can have these systems that work for everybody based on their needs. And I think that provides an extra level of security as well, because if you have something that doesn't work for somebody, think about that. They can go around it, they could circumvent it and kind of make it work for them in a non-secure way. So I think that's really critical and important that you highlighted that. So thank you for that. So Samir, I'll come back to you. How is the anywhere economy changing the way organizations operate? And how is OneSpan helping them navigate these challenges?
That's a good question. I mean, it is important to clarify what the anywhere economy is. All of us are consumers, customers in the anywhere economy, and what we really value is a convenient at-home experience at times. And increasingly, if you look at it, it is a digital experience, it's a remote experience, and a lot many times you want it to be an omni-channel, branded, customized for your needs, right?
Yeah.
So as a business, you got to be thinking differently of how do you provide these remote experiences in a manner that it's yet secure, and you've got to be thinking about how you differently do things like, how do I authenticate a person? How do I verify their identity such that when they are conducting this transaction with me, I yet feel secure and I'm not introducing new risk in my business. I was talking to one of our prospects in Malaysia, and it's a digital only, digital first insurer. And what the regulators are asking them is to self-comply with a need saying that you would want to authenticate and verify the identity even on a digital transaction, the same way you did in a brick and mortar base. So this onus and responsibility is not just something which you take as being a responsible business, but also that regulators are pushing down on people. Um, so there are many questions that you are looking at trying to solve as a business when you look at this. Like one of a few things we touched upon, like what are the biggest thing that people need to get out of from a digital transaction is friction. Customers don't really thrive with friction. You see friction, you move to a different competitor's website. So how do you eliminate friction but yet keep the transaction secure, right? How do you make the transaction smart and intelligent that you're not asking customers over and over the same questions again and again? How do you deliver a branded, a personalized experience that drives loyalty, that drives adoption, that drives confidence in that transaction, the trust in that transaction there?
Right.
And beyond that, I think you started off with that question around the Web 3.0 and the whole data security. Customers are intimately aware today of what the value of their data is. So what are we doing as a business to protect that data from being breached by hackers? And what are we doing to protect our own reputation, which is at stake here as a brand? And then lastly, I think one of the important factors for the anywhere economy is to kind of think of this human element that Eric was talking about. How do you infuse the human element to provide this digitally infused human interaction, which is going to take some customers over the edge to kind of make the transaction happen, right? There are certain demographics, there are certain, some demographics are absolutely digital first, others are in a way looking for that assurance to kind of take a step forward. So all of these things are are in a big way at play in the anywhere economy.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank you.
in,
Thank you for
in
that.
from what we look at from a one span perspective, obviously, and this is an area where we are, when we sit together as a leadership team, we are investing. We want to solve this problem for our customers to kind of be able to engage with their consumers and customers in a big way, right? So this is an area where will see a lot of investment from OneSpan on providing a platform, a digital lifecycle management platform, which allows you to verify the identity, authenticate the individual, and then provide this type of interaction. I mean, today's day and age, you can, as Eric was mentioning, you can embed, co-browsing technologies, audio, video technologies, like we do on these,
Mm.
Zoom calls, team calls that we have, and then be able to provide this in a secure, compliant way, which meets your business requirements and regulatory goals as well. So that's an area we focus on in terms of solving the problem for our customers to provide these secure digital interactions, which are refreshingly easy and which are compliant with what regulators expect from them.
No, that's great. No, thank you. Eric, I saw you nodding. So anything you wanted to add in there as well?
Yeah, I just to add, I think we're entering a really exciting time from a technology and customer experience perspective, and at OneSpan, we're just excited about the opportunity to deliver, brings our decades of security experience and really apply that to helping our customers streamline customer experience, for their customers, and I'm just really excited to be a part of that.
That's excellent. And just an interesting one here. We were talking about the rise of deep fakes, fake news, bots, and it has not only had an impact on the security industry, but also on the internet itself, how people are digesting information, what they're making, how they feel about certain things that are out there, and how their decisions are being made based on the information that's being shared in a way, whether they can tell or not. So, Samir, can you talk to that point for just a moment?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think a couple of years back, people didn't even know deepfakes and things of that nature. But the last political cycle and the whole election cycle definitely, galvanized that point in a big way. But it's extremely relevant even in when we look at it from a digital commerce perspective. You know, when you think about what's happening both from a geopolitical perspective, from a security perspective, organizations, they are tied to the integrity of the engagement they have with their customer. I mean, everyone talks about this. Customers are like the lifeblood of any organization. But as we've been talking about this, they are also the attack surface that hackers and fraudulent characters are going after to kind of penetrate this, right? I mean, penetrate these systems and be able to kind of carry out fraud. And fraud's on an all-time high. So everywhere we look at, these type of issues are creating a crippling effect on businesses of sorts. We saw that last year with the payroll protection program, which was instituted in the United States. Even recently, I was reading about this. There was a cryptocurrency exchange called Binance, and they revealed that they disclosed right now that their chief communications officer was a victim of a deep fake attack which scammed other community members as well. So this is I think it's obviously rampant. When you look at the internet and digital commerce, the basic premise there is to provide a platform which is secure and trusted that you can carry out an interaction, whether it's basic e-commerce, reading data that you're looking at in terms of news and being able to trust that news, or for a business to carry out transactions there. In today's businesses aren't really doing what was just a simple shopping cart type of e-commerce. These are deeply rooted, complex transactions which rely on the internet. They're not like which was happening. They're not anymore a substitute to face-to-face interaction. They actually originate from a digital channel. So the way these transactions can be conducted in a real responsible way is when you trust the integrity of the artifact which is moving around, the integrity of the people who are conducting those transactions, and it all comes together, and it's bi-directional. It's not just a business trusting the consumer who's being saying who they are is really who they are, but also are you really interacting with a valid and legitimate business there? It's bi-directional completely. So bringing this together and being able to kind of provide this in a secure, compliant way, that is our worldview, and that's our mission out there to kind of be able to solve this problem, as Eric was saying, for our customers as such. But the problem out there is really real, and I think being able to kind of see this. Some businesses have started acting on it today. Others will shortly, but I mean, I think it's a problem that most people will have to address.
No, great. I like that you highlighted trust, integrity. You really need to know and trust the source and compile all that together, which is really important that you raise that. And Eric, I'm going to give you the last word here. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience besides all the wonderful pieces of information and the pain points that you've been highlighting in industry, both of you, that people are really dealing with real time today?
Yeah, no, I think just to reemphasize, the point that I made earlier, that a one size fits all approach doesn't work. So depending on, for your viewers, I think it's really important to consider, what is the use case? What is the business impact? What's the problem we're trying to solve? And then make sure that you're working with a partner that both understands that and then can help you put in place the right mechanisms to align to those use cases and scale for the long term, and can accommodate those opportunities for more automated or self-service types of scenarios, all the way to those that really require human moderation to help customers have a great experience that will build hopefully decades of customer loyalty for you.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Eric, and thank you, Samir. It's a pleasure speaking with you both today, and I look forward to speaking to you both again soon.
Well, thanks,
Thanks, Shira.
Thank you.